Talking about Manchester United, who have parted company with Erik ten Hag. Ruud van Nistelrooy is going to be taking temporary charge of the situation, and they are looking for a permanent head coach. But what might that look like for Manchester United? And you can't, I mean, we look back on those incredible times under Sir Alex Ferguson. He was very, very broadly speaking, a man who kind of advocated for a 4-4-2, and that was the way that Manchester United played. But there was lots of flexibility within that. But there was very definitely a Ferguson way of playing. There was something that was identifiable when we saw them on the pitch. And part of that was Paul Scholes, who joins us on the line now. Thank you, Paul, for your time today. Good to talk to you.
Hi, OK.
Paul, I want to ask you about what happens now for Manchester United, because when you look at the appointments that they've made since Sir Alex Ferguson, none of them, they've all been very, very different, and none of them have worked out as Manchester United fans would have hoped that they did. What can they do now that's going to make things different, that's going to mean that this is the appointment that's different?
Well, I think that's the big question, Kelly. It's been a struggle, as you say, to find the right man. We felt we have a couple of times. You think of the stature of Jose Mourinho and Van Gaal. Obviously, David Moyes had great experience, and then Ten Hag came in from Ajax and done a great job. Was he doing an elite job at an elite football club? Probably not. So it was a little bit of a risk. But as you say, there've been 4 or 5 different types of people that you always think you've got a chance with them. Hasn't quite happened. And now they're on to the next one, whoever that may be. He has to be the best in class, which is what Manchester United need.
We've been talking about the importance of this decision in terms of how the new owners are perceived. And obviously they made kind of a decision over the summer in terms of keeping Erik ten Hag. But this is huge for them, and it could give us an idea of what they want from the club, what they want the club to be.
Yes, it will. We're not quite sure yet. They're still quite early into their reign, I suppose. It wasn't that clear that they really still wanted Ten Hag. And I know there was a meeting in the summer to review what had happened over the season, probably the past couple of seasons, which probably wasn't quite good enough. Obviously, that FA Cup probably saved his job. And it looks like in the background they have been speaking to people as well. You know, we hear that Thomas Tuchel was mentioned, I think, just recently as well. I think Xavi's been linked with the job. So, look, it's the first major decision, I think, for Ineos, and they have to try and get that right.
Paul, do you think what you've seen from Ineos up to this point, with the way they've dealt with everything, since they've got to United, the managerial situation and that, do you trust them going forward to try to get this right?
It's a very tough question to answer.
I know, that's what really put it out there for you, Scholesy.
Yeah, cheers, mate. Thanks for your
But it's like you say, it's very early days, though, Paul, isn't it? That's the point.
That's the thing.
It is very early days for them. I think the way they've gone about it hasn't been that great, to be honest. Yeah? You know, a lot of stuff has been leaked. I think they've even admitted that they spoke to people like Thomas Tuchel and some as I mentioned. So I think the first impressions haven't been amazing. I think it's took probably a little bit too much time as well to make their mind up. I think, you know, if you look over his tenure over the last couple of years, there have been some really damning defeats, some really quite embarrassing results as a United fan and United team. I go back to Crystal Palace last year. There was a 7-0, obviously, with Liverpool. Got beat by Bournemouth 3-0 last year as well at home, I think, in the league. And there's been a couple this year as well. You think of the Tottenham game, the Liverpool game at home, obviously Sunday as well. I just think they've took a little bit of time. I think some stuff has come out that possibly shouldn't come out, should be left behind closed doors. But now they've got a chance to try and get the right man. Who that is very hard to judge. I was a big Thomas Tuchel fan, but obviously that's gone. You know, he's managed elite clubs. He's won big trophies with big clubs. obviously that idea has gone now, so it'd be interesting to see which road they go down.
Do you think that an established manager like a Tuchel is the right way forward? Like I know you're saying it's hard to pick individual names in terms of who the next Man United manager would be, but if you're looking broadly, if you were in charge of picking that, would you go for an established manager? Would you go for a certain type of football? Is there something that you think the new manager should have?
I think he needs to have experience at an elite football club. This is one of the very biggest clubs in the football world, so so they should have the very best in class. The list there is, I think Zidane's the one out of that list for me who has been at a major club and won major honours. I'm not sure how well educated he is with his English language, or he really wants to come to England. You never really get that feeling with him. I think Hammering is an interesting one, but again, that's could be a risky one. We all know the style of play. He plays really good football. They were talking about him for City, which obviously tells you something about his pedigree. But could he come to Manchester? All these managers, not all of them, but most of them, they've been at clubs where probably the expectation isn't as high. I look at Thomas Frank when I see that, and I'm sure he's a very capable manager, might be a capable manager for Manchester United, but expectations are not what they are for Manchester United. At Manchester United, you have to win, and you have to do it with a certain swagger and a bit of entertainment as well. And the pressure really comes on, and we've had 4 or 5 managers who we think or we thought could go on and be successful, and every one of them have failed. So it's big for Ineos now to try and get the right one.
Paul, do you think that's something that's almost underestimated? I mean, obviously being an elite coach thing, but it's actually having the personality and almost the kind of the character to just weather what Manchester United is. Yeah,
and I think that's probably where Ten Hag fell down a little bit. I think he was become quite difficult in press conferences as well with the character of him. But yeah, look, to manage Manchester United, I think you do need to have the full package. Obviously, we had Sir Alex, who was the best. Who wasn't that much of a coach, to be honest with you, but he knew how to manage. He knew how to, he knew how to get the very best out of players, and he always had somebody with him who was a top class coach. Now, there aren't many managers like that these days. Managers are not managers anymore; they're more coaches. So these coaches have to do what they do on the training field. They also have to manage as well. So finding that right person is going to be difficult. And like I say, expectations of that club are huge. The last couple of years have been, so poor. Finished 8th in the Premier League last year, and the start of this season, obviously 14th in the Premier League now after 9 games. Haven't won a European game yet. 3 points, 3 draws. So it was inevitable it was going to happen. But as you said, the right man now is imperative. Whether that's a coach or a manager, normally a head coach is now, I think. So they have to do the homework. I'm sure they've been doing the homework. Feels like they've been trying to find someone for quite some time, and possibly haven't come across the right character or somebody who actually wants the job. So that's the challenge they've got now in the next couple of weeks to try and find the right man.
Paul, thanks very much for your time today. Good to talk to you.
Thanks, Paul. You're the greatest, Paul.
See you later.
Bye. Bye. Miguel, in terms of who Manchester United have looked at, and we touched on a couple of those names during the course of that conversation, there are names who've been very heavily linked with the club who are not at Manchester United. Is that a concern, the people who don't want the job?
Yeah, and it's something that has evolved over the past few years, where obviously, Manchester United are such a size of club, have such a status that most managers would almost take it without thinking. But it feels like they've got to such a point now where there's been so many issues that if you're like, it kind of comes back to that famous or that infamous comment that Brendan Rodgers had about Chelsea, where I'm trying to build a career, not destroy it. And you do wonder, if you're a young manager on the up, like say someone like Amorim, is this the best possible option? Is
he removed himself from everything now?
So I reported this to the Independent before we came on air.
No, it's fine.
But he's on United's list, obviously, but he doesn't want to leave mid-season.
Right.
He's doing well with Sporting. There's a huge buyout clause as well. I think it's €20 million for a foreign club. And also, he will have all sorts of options at the end of the season, including Man City, given that the sporting director there, the sporting director from Sporting, Hugo Viana, is replacing cheeky Biggerstein.
Yeah.
So a lot of people think that if Guardiola doesn't renew, that it'll be Amorim in there. And but nearly every club in Europe wants him. But even looking at that list as well, it speaks to Kelly's point about what type of manager and, how City pursued Guardiola for so long. They're all very different types of coaches. Amorim is very different to Xavi. And yet they're and Thomas Frank is completely different again.
You look at it, it's so many different... Again, that just feeds back into, do you actually know what you want?
Is there also a point to be made about Ten Hag's career path? You mentioned the Ajax structure and how it's, for decades, it's been famous for having that structure all the way through the club. And managers who are successful there tend to work within that blueprint. And that doesn't always translate because there's a familiarity that's ingrained in the club. Someone like Thomas Frank, who's at Brentford, is in a club that is run in a specific way. If you look at the way that Brighton is run, there's always that succession plan. There's a difference between a manager who can come in, or a head coach who can come in and stamp their authority, and a head coach who can work within a structure.
Well, Kels, this is why...
I waffled, but you get the broad point.
Totally get it. It's a good point, Kels. That's why you look at someone like Graham Potter, leaving Brighton, so well-structured club, excuse me, and going to Chelsea, which was...
At the time was in flux.
At the time, it was all over the place. I think that Ten Hag, as well, leaving Ajax and coming to Man United, I'm sure for them to build some form of structure of what they were going to play to. And this is where I was quite excited for him when he came there, because obviously he was doing very well there. I'm thinking that he's obviously going to recognise and bring some good players to Man United, and then add to the Man United grit and determination and winning mentality. I saw it was something that would have been perfect for him. Now, even seeing someone like Thomas Frank's name on it, I wouldn't like Thomas Frank to leave Brentford and go to Man United in this current climate, because Man United haven't got the structure and that behind him for him to be able to focus on being a coach, what gets the best out of the players, because he hasn't got that behind him. And that's what they're going to need to get. That's any manager that goes in there. They're going in there, like you rightly say, Miggy, and they're like, well, I'm not sure right now with Man United. It's not stable enough. And that is where I worry about them getting the right person.
It's a bit double-edged, isn't it? They need this kind of big figure to impose a structure, but then they also need a structure to attract the right
big
person.
Figure. And the thing is, with these managers, why they'll be like, wow. I'm still feeling like what happened with Thomas Tuchel, because we're talking about a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
He could have been the United manager. He's not the United manager. He's taken the England job, 18 months, albeit, but he must have known and thought, something, like you're saying, Miggy, that doesn't feel like a good fit for me right now. And if you look at Thomas Tuchel and where he is, the way he left Chelsea, the way he left Bayern Munich, to come somewhere like Manchester United and it doesn't work out, really does lower your stock a bit. And maybe that's why I believe Thomas Tuchel's made a decision. He's going to manage England. We're going to hopefully win the World Cup, and then after that, he'll go and manage a domestic team again.
Right. Well, that's an aside, but it's an interesting prediction.
Yeah, can you imagine these options when he comes back? These options when he comes back.
Well, Manchester United will be hoping that they're not looking to change their manager at that stage, because the appointment that they make next will be the